professor, physician, epidemiologist. I am Dr. Sri Banerjee. I am Dr. Sri Banerjee, core faculty for the College of Health Sciences and Public Policy at Walden University. And in this video, I'll be going over Sustainable Development Goal number 8. So for Sustainable Development Goal number 8, the main focus is promoting sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. So again, I always like to start off by thinking about the pandemic, COVID-19, and how it's affected these areas. So as a result of the pandemic, it's important to know that 255 million full-time jobs were lost. And so this is 4 times the number that was lost during the, if you remember, during the global financial crisis around 2007, 2008, where the housing bubble collapsed during that time. This was a time when a lot of people lost their jobs, and this pandemic actually was 4 times that amount. So 1.6 million informal economy workers were actually who lacked a social safety net were significantly affected as a result of this unemployment. And you saw a lot of this informal workers having to travel great lengths, migrant workers. In India, you might have seen some of these pictures when there were shutdowns that were announced, and many times without much notice. So within a matter of hours, people would be ordered to be locked down. And so a lot of this, the economy was affected. So it's underway. A lot of this repair and rebuilding is underway. And the global real GDP per capita actually went down in 2020, but is going back up. So currently the GDP, the global GDP is about at the level that it was in 2017. So this is most recent 2022. But for many countries, so a lot of this, maybe 2023, we need to give a little bit more time before this is recovered all the way. What's going on with international tourism and arrivals? Well, this has fallen from 1.5 billion in 2019 to 381 million in 2020. So places that rely on tourism, a lot of the Caribbean islands, many islands, island economies, a lot of the revenue comes from tourism and people visiting, and so a lot of times the population of actually supervised studies where the island population was being studied for instance, dengue. One of my former students, Dr. Brendan Lee, he finished a dissertation looking at the environmental variables that affect acquisition of and transmission of dengue, and in that model, he had to specifically look at variables that address tourism. So this is a really an important area when you're grappling with public health issues to take into account. So something else tragic that has happened due to the pandemic is the fact that a lot more youth are not employed, and so a lot not in school, not in training, vocational training. So young women and young men, 15% of youth not in education among men, and that rate is double. 30% of women are not in education or employment or training. So this needs to these trends need to go up, and these percentages actually these percentages need to be down. We need to have very low unemployment or school or training. The idea is that there needs to be some sort of formal education going on, ideally education for youth. So what are the targets? Now we're getting to the main part of Sustainable Development Goal 8. Number 1, sustainable economic growth. So we have to have, it's not enough to have economic growth. We know that it has to be sustainable. It has to be something that lasts. So per capita economic growth in accordance with national circumstances. So it's contextualized. In particular, at least 7% of GDP growth per year in the least developed countries. So even if there's not a lot of growth, if there's 7%, then we're good. Number 2, diversify, innovate, and upgrade for economic productivity. So what does that mean? Achieving higher targets, higher levels of economic, achieving higher levels of economic productivity through how? Through diversification, technological upgrading and innovation, and including through a focus on high value-added and labor-intensive sectors. So taking a look at a lot of these economic factors and making sure that they are cohesively working together. Number 3 is promoting policies to support job creation for economic productivity. That's pretty self-explanatory. With job creation, with job growth, you have economic productivity. So promoting development-oriented policies that support productive activities, decent job creation, entrepreneurship, creativity, and innovation, and encourage the formalization and growth of micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, including through access to financial services. Number 4, improving resource efficiency in consumption and production, improving progressively. So we're wanting to not only efficiently consume, but produce resource efficiency in consumption and production. So these are broad frameworks of programs which have been put in place to ensure that consumption, production, and environmental degradation during economic growth is not happening. So that is getting at an additional important point, that a lot of times when you see economic growth, simultaneously you're seeing environmental degradation, an increase in environmental degradation. So we want that relationship of economic increase in economic productivity to be inverse from environmental degradation, ideally. If not inverse, at least not not as much as before of environmental degradation. So developed countries can take the lead, show the way on how this is done. And then number 5, looking at full employment and decent work with equal pay. So by 2030, achieving full and productive employment and decent work for all women and men, including for young people and persons with disabilities, and equal pay for work of equal value. So there's a couple more remaining, 4 more to go. I'm gonna quickly go over these. They're important to kind of keep in mind as a whole. So what's the next one? Promoting youth employment, education, and training. Very important. I was telling you a lot of youth, I think the rate was about 15% among men, but double that amount for women who are not involved in this due to the pandemic. Also ending modern slavery, trafficking, and child labor. This needs to completely end. And then next is protecting labor rights and promoting safe working environments. This is extremely important. And then finally, promoting beneficial and sustainable tourism. So there you have it. These are the targets, but we cannot forget that there's always, and this is a built-in system that is part of the Sustainable Development Goals, which I especially appreciate, is the fact that you have means to achieve targets. And this is not an all-inclusive, but something as a designed as a starting point to try to achieve these goals. So number one, universal access to banking, insurance, and financial services. So the reason this is important is because these are the safety nets. It's important to not only live from day to day on wage labor, but also be able to create situations where you can take loans. I talked about microlending in some of my sessions. So making sure there is a banking system, there is a financial system, which then then serves to protect the group. And so you might think of risk in this way, or safety nets as well. Also increasing aid for trade support, and so definitely boosting trade between countries is important. And then developing a global youth employment system. So creating this sort of this empowers youth by providing more employment opportunities so that they can be involved actively within the economy. So there you have it. These are the all the facets of Sustainable Development Goal number 8 as a starting point. So now you can kind of take what I've taught you and take this and conduct your own original studies and research. Thank you for listening.